great place to tell that story of how the mustard seed became a great branch. And it isn't about power. You can hear me, no worries with that. It's no bad distraction. We've, in our origins journey, explored kingdoms of power. We've obviously seen Rome ruling with taxation, soldiers conquering. We've seen the power of Herod the Great ruling with taxation, armies, death, tyranny, but also building projects. That was part of how Herod proclaimed his greatness. And we've seen the Jewish response of zealots who fought power with power, violence with violence. Right under the nose of all of that power is Jesus teaching up north that the true kingdom will be a mustard seed. No one will notice it, but it will grow to be the greatest of all the branches. Now, this idea of a kingdom, a Jewish kingdom, that would encompass the whole world, it was not invented by Jesus. It is everywhere in the Old Testament that the Jewish people would be a blessing and somehow a light for all the nations. Do you remember I quoted on the first day we met Galilee, I quoted that prophecy hundreds of years before Christ. In the future, God will honor Galilee of the Gentiles. Do you remember this? The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned. For unto us a child is born, to us a son is given, the government will be on his shoulders. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom from that time on and forever. So there was this idea that there would come a descendant of David who would rule forever. More than that, Isaiah chapter 49, the same Isaiah, it says, "It is too small a thing for you to be my servant, to restore only the tribes of Jacob. I will make you a light for the Gentiles, the nations, that my salvation may reach to the ends of the earth." So Jesus inherited this idea that there would be a blessing and a light for all the nations that would come out of this place. But he said it would start small, and it did indeed, because Caesarea Maritima is the place where Christianity crossed an almighty threshold. This is the place where the first Roman family and friends were converted. And we have this in the book of Acts, chapter 10. This is the place where the little flickering light in Galilee became an international light. Right here, around the year 32, 33. In retrospect, it is an almighty historical event. As the first family of Romans convert to this little Jewish light. And when I first came to Caesarea 20 years ago or more, there used to be, I don't know, I didn't even see if it was still there, a great big sign toward the front listing all of the great events that happened in Caesarea, you know, from Herod the Great 20 BC all the way through to the Byzantine period. And I looked in vain for any mention of this conversion of the first Roman family, whose name we know, Cornelius, part of the Italian regiment, a centurion stationed here in Caesarea, and it wasn't mentioned. And I was like, outrage. And then I remembered, Jesus said, the kingdom is just like a little mustard seed. And then I was cool. I was like, okay. It was imperceptible at the time. No one really would have understood the significance of what was happening, but it was the gateway to Christianity going to the nations. And I want to pick up the passage of how this happened. This is in Acts chapter 10. Remember, Luke, the author of the book of Acts, of the Gospel of Luke, is also the author of the book of Acts. And he records that basically what happened is Cornelius the centurion was attracted to the Jewish faith. He's what they call a God-fearer. It's one of the interesting things. We have good evidence that many pagans were drawn to Judaism in this period, because everyone had worked out that the greatest pagan philosophers had all come to believe in one God. And they realized the Jews had been onto this for centuries before them. And so they thought that was totally weird. And more than that, Jews not just believed in one God, they had an ethical system that was all about justice. And they'd got onto that long before Aristotle wrote about justice. And so, a lot of Greeks and Romans were thinking maybe the Jews were onto something, and they called them God-fearers, and Cornelius was one of these. He was a pagan still, because he still had to do all the rituals of a Roman soldier, a centurion no less, but he was drawn to Judaism, and we're told that he had a dream. That there was a Jew 60 kilometres south in Jaffa, or Joppa, as we read it in the book of Acts, just south of Tel Aviv. And that Jew will tell you how to know the true God. So the centurion sends off servants 60 kilometres down the way. And Peter has also had his own dream, where the dream is basically that Peter was meant to eat unclean food, non-kosher food, which is a really big deal. I mean, last night I actually struggled to get a glass of milk, not even to stay in the restaurant, but I asked, can I have a glass of milk? Because I know you'd never mix milk with meat. Can I have a glass of milk? And I will go straight to the lift into my room. Was anyone there when I was trying to ask for my glass of milk? And it was like, no, I can't do that. Anyway, our cool dude, the boss man, came over and said, I can make this happen. So he made it happen. I got my glass of milk and I went to bed. All right. Peter was told to mix milk with meat. Not exactly, but he was told to eat all sorts of unkosher food. And in this dream, Peter said, no way, Lord. And the Lord said to him, no, way. And a couple of days later, these servants of Cornelius knock on the door of the tanner's house where Peter was staying and ask him to come and speak to their Gentile lord, their Gentile centurion. And Peter puts two and two together. I've had a dream that I shouldn't be calling things unclean that are clean. And these guys want me to go and talk to an unclean Gentile. Okay, so I'll take the hint. And he took the 3-day journey up here, came to Caesarea, and he's gathered in a house here at Caesarea somewhere, we have no idea which one. And we pick up our story. The following day, Peter arrived at Caesarea. He went inside and found a large gathering of people, because Cornelius had got all his family and friends, all of them Romans, to come. Peter said to them, this is not a very good opening line, you are well aware that it is against my law for a Jew to associate with a Gentile. But God has shown me that I must not call any man impure or unclean. Then Peter began to speak to them. Now, I don't know if you were listening in the Holy Sepulchre this morning. It just turns out the reading that woman gave in the Mass was this exact reading. She got up and she said, Peter began to speak to these Gentiles. You know the message of God sent to the people of Israel, telling them the good news of peace through Jesus Christ, who is Lord of all. You know what has happened around Judea, beginning in Galilee after the baptism of John, how God anointed Jesus with power to heal and deliver people. He was arrested and he was hung on a tree, but God raised him from the dead, and he preaches the Christian message. And then it says, and while Peter was still speaking these words, the Holy Spirit came on all those Romans who heard the message. And the circumcised believers, the Jews who were with Peter, were astonished that the gift of the Spirit had been given even to the Gentiles, it says. Peter then said, can anyone keep these people from being baptized? They've received the Spirit just as we have, so he ordered them to be baptized in the name of Jesus Christ. Then they asked Peter to stay with them a few days, and he stayed with them and taught them all the apostolic traditions in those days. Now, it's not on the history board, but that is the pivot point of Christianity becoming an international religion. But I want to pause there and just parenthetically tell you another real historical event that's happening almost exactly the same time, but went a very different way. There was a Jewish teacher called Ananias from Galilee in the year 30, so right about our time. And he, traveling on business, because he was a merchant, traveled to the kingdom of Adiabene, which is basically northern Iraq, doing business. And he got into conversation with Isates, the pagan prince of Adiabene. And we have this from Josephus, that he told Isates about God. And Isates must have been one of these God-fearers who was interested in not Christianity, in Judaism, in monotheism. And we're told Ananias led Isates to believe in God, and all the royal women, he had a harem, all believed in the God of Israel. And then Munabaz, the brother of Isates, also came to believe. And there's like this Jewish revival over in a pagan kingdom, hundreds and hundreds of kilometers away. And then the question of circumcision comes up. And astonishingly, Ananias, according to Josephus, replied to King Isates, "You can worship God even without being circumcised if you have fully decided in your heart to be an adherent of Judaism." Sounds like a proto-Christian. But actually, Josephus tells us more. Afterwards, there was another Jew named Eliezer from Galilee. He had a reputation for being extremely strict when it came to matters of our ancestral laws. He went and urged Isates to carry out the rite of circumcision. For when he came to pay his respects to him and found him reading the law of Moses, he said, "In your ignorance, O king, you are guilty of the greatest offense against the law, thereby against God." And Isates and the whole royal family submitted to circumcision. And instead of being told they could worship God, by the heart, they become strict Jews. And this whole royal family becomes massive benefactors of Jerusalem. And we have evidence of this royal family all around Jerusalem, by the way. Some of us went to the American colony for drinks last night. Isates and the royal family are all buried about 100 metres from the American colony in Jerusalem. And their tombs are still there. You can go and visit the tombs. But my point is, almost exactly the same time, this Gentile family is told they cannot worship God without becoming Jews. And at the same time, Peter is here in Caesarea saying to Gentile families, you can. And circumcision is not the rite of entry into Christianity. And from that moment, Christianity becomes a religion with deep roots in Judaism, but actually never again requires people to become Jews in order to be believers in God. Our story is happening at the same time as Ananias, and it launched an international movement of believing in the Jewish Messiah without becoming a Jew. And this is where I want to return to the theory of Pincus Lapide. If you remember way back at 6:30 this morning, in the tomb, I said there was a famous Jewish Orthodox scholar who believed Jesus rose again, but he didn't think that had any implications for his Orthodox Judaism. Pincus Lapide. He argued, he in his book, he explains, the evidence is clear to him that a resurrection took place, and then he theologizes it as a Jew. And this is what he says. He says, maybe God raised to life this heretic, Jesus, in order to start a movement that would at least convert Gentiles to monotheism and ethics. So it's only a Gentile religion. And because, Pincus Lapide says, because the Jews weren't going to go and do missions to the Gentiles, God raised a heretic, Jesus, as a miracle that Gentiles might believe in. But Pincus Lapide says, it might have happened, probably did happen, Pincus said. But that doesn't mean it's for me, as an Orthodox Jew. It's brilliant, right? And it's an option. Christians saw it differently. Christians said, no, Jesus is the Lord of Israel and the Lord of Gentiles. And that's the stunning claim. That a baptizing form of Judaism is the Judaism for the whole world, including Jewish people. This is where Isaiah's right would be for the whole world. And my point to land this whole tour is that it started here. The coast of Israel, looking out to the world. From this place and these few Roman families and their friends, starting with Cornelius, from this spot Christianity went over to Turkey, over to Greece, to Italy, to Gaul, England, throughout Americas, all the way to Australia. The mustard seed became the grape tree. And that, my friends, is the origins of Christianity.